Hello, my name is Naoki Matsuo, and welcome back to this training course of the climate change mitigation. And today I'm going to talk on the cross-cutting aspect of climate change mitigation, especially on the designing and implementation of the NDC. Okay, let me start. Okay, this is the theme that I'm going to talk, the understanding and designing and implementing the NDC, the key cross-cutting element for your NDC and its implementation. So you can, this is like to say that you can stop and take a look again afterwards if you want by using your computer. Okay, that's good. Okay, let me start. The periodic evolution of the NDC. There are several steps that you're going to take. The one is you are in the preparatory stage of the NDC because the NDC will start from next year. So the first you're to understand now the current situation, the current NDC situation. That is a very important element. And the next one is designing new NDC to go forward. I hope that many of you are undertaking this stage. The third one is from next year, you will implement the actions and new NDC. And tracking the progress of the actions and NDC afterwards. Okay. So for the first preparatory stage, and so these two steps of preparatory stage, and probably you may be able to, or you need to understand what you have been doing. So historical trend with factor analysis, that would be very important. And also the PUMS imply policy and the measures that is now implemented and their performance as well. Okay, and this is the next one is the designing new NDC and go forward, underlying plans and strategy. Underlying plans and strategy, that is not related to climate change, but also some other underlying element of economic development and power development and something like that. And also you take a look at the PUMS planned and anticipated as well. And also you are to have some scenarios, BAU business as usual, with existing major scenario and with additional major scenarios. Those kind of scenarios are to be analyzed for better designing of the NDC. And you have to have some decisions for the NDC. And after implementation, you are to revise your action plan, and you have the PDCA cycle procedures, and you are to have the monitoring plan of the key performance indicators, the sector-wise KPIs and the policy and measures-wise KPIs and some others. And also the multi-level reporting implies that your sub-sectoral, some ministerial reporting will be compiled to the ministerial level and also national level as well. So several layers are needed. And after the implementation, during the implementation, you have to track the progress of the actions and then this itself. So you have to judge whether those policy and measures are on track or off track. This overall implies the NDC itself, or sector-wise, and the key policy and measures-wise. And also such kind of historical trends are to be analyzed as well at that stage, and how to adjust to get the better performance. And the UNFCCC or Paris Agreement requires the reporting biannually. Okay. And for the preparatory stage, probably most of you are doing some bottom-up approach. So in order to set some NDC mitigation target, you may need to, or you are to continue these kind of steps and procedures. So the current situations that are important element to be understand: greenhouse gas trends, energy mix, economic situation, political situation that includes domestic and international as well. And if you have the past NDC or current NDC, then you are to assess what is and what it has been done. And underlying future plans for development. So you may have some 5 years development plan or strategy, and also you may have the forward development plan as well, and the existing plan on the transportation sectors and some others as well. And you assess whether the status of those kind of plans. That is somewhat underlying plan for the climate change mitigation. And setting the BAU, business as usual, that is current major scenario. So trend analysis of the various factors that are very important. And also the sector selected tools and models for that purpose. And assess input parameters and feasibility studies. So those kind of scenario analysis, including a business as usual scenario analysis, that is an important fundamental aspect to design the NDC. And the next one is the estimation of each measure, the stock take and analyze of current, so ongoing your policy measures. And assess the effects with KPIs, the key performance indicators of each policy measure. And the barrier analysis is needed as well, and possible extension to the better, to be a broader or better performance ones. That is needed as well. And the next one is setting scenarios for decision making. So for decision makers, you may need to prepare some of the material that is used for the decision making. So consistency with the plan, I mean the underlying plans, and the scenario story setting. So story setting is important, and the utilization of models, if you want, and the reassess parameters as well, and the clarification of each situation. And finally, your decision maker is to select the target scenario, I mean the NDC target. So political aspects are to be considered, costs and benefits are considered, barriers are considered, client ambitions are also considered, and select, prepare new scenario, and develop an NDC, and design the PDCA cycles, track change targets. Those kind of things are to be needed as well. So, and once you have this process, then you may be able to feed it back to this stage and redo that kind of process again, if you want. So for during those kind of the processes, the intermutual support, inputs, coordination, those kind of things are very important, critically important. Okay, let me talk about some key component of such an processes. One is the understanding the emission trend, and also the NDC target in the future. So I'd like to say that the factor analysis is a good tool. There are several tools, of course, and the factor analysis at this moment, I'm going to talk on the economic-wide CO2 emissions, the factor analysis of those kind of the parameters. That is needed, that is explained. And this, the Kaya identity, so-called Kaya identity, the delta CO2 is the annual change of the CO2, and divided by CO2 implies the annual change, percentage change of the CO2 is divided by 3 factors. One is the economic growth, GDP growth, and this is the energy efficiency improvement, and this is carbon intensity improvement. So these are somewhat minus in many cases. So the CO2 growth rate is divided by GDP growth rate minus energy efficiency improvement rate minus the carbon decarbonization of the energy mix. So they take a look at this picture. So annual growth rate of some period, that is, for example, the GDP growth rate is expected this much, for example, 4% per annum. And the energy efficiency is something like that, something this arrow. Then energy growth rate is something like that. And energy switching, fuel switching is tend to be minus, then CO2 growth rate, something like that. So this is very diagrammatic, I mean that the easy to understand way to analyze the factors to grow or decrease the CO2. Okay, CO2 increase is divided by 3 factors in this case. Because this is a kind of factor analysis that could be applied, not only is such an economic-wide CO2, but also, as you can see, the economic-wide CO2 could be applied, but sector-wise something it could be applied, policy and measures-wise something that could be applied. So this kind of analysis, factor analysis, is very widely used. So it's very convenient to use. And it can be applied to the past trend. And also it can be applied to future scenarios and NDC target as well. And this is based on the intensity analysis. The intensity is a very important element to KPI, key performance indicators, to be considered. So from past, this is the past trend. We have some statistics. And this is the scenario, the business as usual, this one, with existing major scenario, this one, with additional business scenario, this one. So there are several scenarios. So for scenario by scenario, you can take the similar type of the factor analysis and consider whether or which would be the best to be selected, would be a U, or selected an NDC or something like that. So in the case of Japan, so this is what I did as an analysis for the Japan NDC. The Japan NDC, this shows the GDP growth and CO2 emissions and energy use, energy consumption, especially the final energy consumption. And as you can see, the GDP growth is something like that. And this 2013 is the base year. And now we are here. So we can see that GDP growth was expected. And then we see that to be grown like this one. But actual GDP growth was somewhat lower than expected. And CO2 is something like that. In the CO2, the actual trend was lower than the expected CO2. Energy as well, the same. So whether our policies and measures was so successful or not. So in order to do so, we have this kind of analysis on the intensities. The CO2 divided by TFC, so the energy, implies the carbon intensity, and the TFC divided by GDP is the energy intensity. Okay. So in the case of energy, this is the base year. This is the base year. From the base year, or from the 1999, then we have this kind of trend. The NDC target is here in the case of such an intensity. So it means that the almost on track. We are on track. So it may mean that our policy measures has been almost successful to meet that target, NDC target. In the case of this carbon intensity, yes, from 2013, that we are almost on track. But before that, as you may know, that the nuclear accident happened in Japan, and CO2 increased a lot. So in that sense, we may see several other inspections. So for the PDCA cycle for performance improvement, the PDCA cycle is very important procedures for each level of policy measures. For example, NDC level, the national level, and also the sector level or ministerial level, and also the policy measures, each policy measure level. So the PDCA cycle is very important in the sense to assess the performance each year. Okay, first we have to set some target, the NDC target, for example, and you have to select some key performance indicators, KPIs. Key performance indicators shows the important indicator that shows the performance of such an plan. Okay, and also some management systems are to be organized with some action plans, and implement that actions with monitoring. And after monitoring, you have to compile and evaluate and report the performance and consider what was there. It was good, then it's okay, but it not much as expected. So we have to analyze the performance and assess some additional options to be considered in the next step. So this is the kind of cycle. So this is called PDCA cycle, but actually this is not the cycle to come back to the original point, but this is the kind of the evolutionary cyclic evolutionary process. And for that, for the monitoring, you have to monitor the key performance indicators, some actions. So key KPIs includes the power generation by the project, the passenger kilometer of the passengers, and lighting hours of the office, and several other things. So KPIs are to be monitored, and these KPIs are to be used for calculation of the greenhouse gas emission reductions as well. So the GHG/V implies the greenhouse gas monitoring, reporting, and the verification. So this is the quantification of the greenhouse gas effects. And this is to be done by using such an KPIs monitoring included in the PDCA cycle. So this PDCA cycle could be, as I said, that these are the policy and measures level, or some ministerial level, or national level. And so at the national level, it is nothing but the NDC. Okay, so this is the KPI, performance improvement related things. So you have to take a look in detail afterwards. Okay, how to track the progress of NDC. So in many of you, or most of you, have the target that is specified, NDC target that is specified at the gap between the below or between the BAU. Okay, the BAU trajectory is here. This is the greenhouse gas emissions. BAU trajectory is here, and the target trajectory is here. So target is something like that. So minus 30% below the target and the BAU or something like that. So it might be better to have some trajectory, not just 2030's value, but that trajectory could be important. And in order to assess whether you are on track or not, so you are to assess, for example, in the 2023, if you are at this above the such a target trajectory, it means that you are off track. But your status is below the target trajectory, you're on track. Okay, so those kind of things are to be reported biannually in your biannual transparency report to the UNFCCC. Okay, the messages that I'd like to say is that the factor analysis for the past and the future scenarios. The future scenario may include the MDC scenario, target scenarios, for the better understanding. So it might be better for you to prepare some, undertake some analysis for the past and for the future as well. So whether it is somewhat continued or not. And anything interministerial coordination, the collaboration, that should be driven and enhanced. So actually the climate change mitigation is not exactly the not primarily for the mitigation of the climate change, but it is good for, it is mainly for example, power supply, and it is good for the more efficient transportation and something like that. So you are to collaboratively scheme among the ministries. That is very important. And analysis of the current key policy and measures is essential for maximizing potential. So you are to analyze the key pumps, policy and measures, and assess whether it is good or not, and how it has been done. and what kind of barriers are there, how to remove the barriers. Those kind of things are to be assessed. And the PDCA cycle, as I said, that is very important for each action, is a key to improve the performance. Okay, so each year you have to check whether you're good stage or not. So, and greenhouse gas MRV that is needed in some cases, especially in the case of the biennial transportation report. And such a GHG MRV that should be designed in the PDCA cycle. So it could be in some sense a standalone mechanism, but it might be better to integrate them into the PDCA cycle in order to consider that such an performance building, better performance building may be linked directly to the greenhouse gas emission reductions. That is very essential. Okay, so that's all from us, from me. So I hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and you are to check again and by downloading the file and also review it as well. Thanks a lot.